Hey guys, welcome back to Set the Standard with the Seldons, the Seldon Standard. Today's episode is going to be really exciting. First of all, this has been already such a great experience, Dad. Have you been having fun?
Yes, I have actually. It allows us to really kind of share with some of the things we've been talking about for quite a while. So it is fun. Yeah.
So today's episode is particularly going to be around the topic of diet and all the different types of diet. We're going to be focusing on one or two particular diets that my dad followed for so long and that I have been following my entire life. Well, there's two diets actually I've been following my entire life, and we'll get into those. So basically, we're going to talk about our pros and cons and our experience and kind of where it came from, because I chose to be on the diets. I shouldn't say on the diets, live a lifestyle. Because remember, these are lifestyles. They become my lifestyle. So when you're choosing the right diet for you and what works for you and makes you feel the best, that becomes a lifestyle. That becomes a habit. It becomes something you constantly have to work on. I am working on my diet all the time and shape shifting and moving things around. So
Yeah, and I think what you said is important. Dieting is when someone goes on a quote diet, they typically are changing in many ways dramatically their current eating habits and to lose weight, right? And unfortunately, if you look at health or if you look at exercise compared to dieting, the amount of money spent on dieting versus just exercise is significant. And the point of that is that sometimes dieting doesn't work.
Well, wouldn't you say
and we're jumping into it, but I want to make that distinction. When we talk about diet, that's the food we're intaking.
Right, no matter what, whether
that's correct.
You're unhealthy, you're healthy, right. That's what I was just going to correct you on to make sure people know. When I say diet, my diet.
I thought I was correcting you.
Well, now I'm correcting you. Yeah, well, the correction here is when I say my diet, this is to maintain my health and my healthiest feeling.
It's a lifestyle.
Yes. So when we say pick the right diet for you, this isn't to say whether you're eating unhealthy or healthy or both, or you're feeling overweight, you're not feeling yourself, or you feel great, you still have a diet you follow. And if you don't have a diet you follow and you eat whatever is in front of you, that's still your diet. You just don't care what's in front of you, So I guess we can get right into it. We're going to start with my dad set the tone for my diet.
Yeah, I think after, I played some sports in high school, but I was okay. And then I got completely out of just really any kind of physical activity per se, other than working. And my diet was horrible. I was eating fast food and so forth into my 20s. And then I started kind of working out, mostly just weights and lifting and, trying to see how strong I could get or big or whatever. That's guys are dumb that way. And so I just was going to this gym. It was all power lifters and stuff. And that was great.
Oh, you started powerlifting in your 20s?
I didn't power lift. I went to a powerlifting gym, but
Okay.
there was a lot of those types of activities. I never really got into that. But most of the guys that were in this gym were looking to build strength and size. And so I went there, and that was fun, and I enjoyed that. And I did get stronger and so forth. But then I was kind of like getting to a point where I think I went out for a bike ride or something, and I went like 3 miles, and I was like out of breath. And I'm like, man, and I looked fit, I was in pretty good shape. But I was like, man, I'm really not in shape, because I went out for this 3 miles in Michigan is pretty flat. So it wasn't like some dramatic hill or anything. So I was like, maybe I need to do more cardio. But a lot of the guys that are trying to get big and bulky don't do as much cardio. And there's some people out there that will roll their eyes on that. I didn't really care about that. What I cared about is health. So where we're going with this podcast is about healthy lifestyle.
What's your definition of health?
That's right. And so, that's what I'm going to get to. And I think that the key to that is it's not about, so many people measure their health by a scale, as an example.
True.
people measure their health by how they look in a certain type of clothing.
Mm-hmm.
Other people measure their health on how far they can walk and how far they could run, or how far they can ride a bike or accomplish some other specific goal. And so as I evolved to this, the cardiovascular side of things, and wanted to increase my ability from a VO2 type of thing, as you'd call it, I started looking into how I would go about that. And being a kid that grew up with dirt bikes and riding motorcycles out in the trails and stuff like that, I saw these mountain bikes and I was like, well, that's pretty cool. So before I knew it, I was in the bike shop buying a mountain bike, and immediately I was hooked because I could ride it on pavement. I could ride it in the dirt. And lo and behold, where I lived, there were trails. But then I realized how hard it was. And I was like, whoa, I am out of shape. I go out in the trails. I'm riding 3, 4 miles, 5 miles. And I'm like breathing hard. I'm pushing my bike and all that kind of thing. And I'm a pretty competitive guy. So I knew that I could do better than that. I knew I wouldn't be some Olympic athlete or anything, but I knew I could do better. So what was important, and around this time too, I decided to become a personal trainer. And it wasn't like I was going to be, I did it more for the process of going for the education of being a personal trainer. So all of a sudden, all these things started to align. So I started riding my bike more, and I started getting a little bit stronger, a little bit faster. And then I decided I wanted to race. And so as I was doing all that, I started looking at my diet, because at that point, I really hadn't changed a lot. I mean, you could say I was, quote, eating healthier. I wasn't eating fast food at that time.
Did you notice your performance was getting better though, even though you didn't change your diet?
Well, it was because I was with endurance sports, which is ultimately what this ended up being. That only happens by training, by doing a lot. So the only way you're going to get better at riding your bike longer distances is to ride your bike longer distances. That's just a fact. You know,
no matter what you're eating.
Yeah, if you're a sprinter and you're just doing short sprints, you're not going to go out and run 10 miles, most likely. I'm not a runner, so someone thinks differently, I'm sure they'll comment. But normally, and you were a short distance runner, you didn't have to go out and train and run 10 miles.
No.
You just practice short. And if you look at a sprinter, an Olympic sprinter, and you look at an Olympic marathon runner, they're built totally different.
Right, yes.
So I was looking for the endurance. And by the way, during this process, I lost a lot of my size that I had put on lifting all these weights. It was kind of funny watching myself go from one change to the other. But in the end, I really enjoyed more of not only the physical side of riding my bike in the woods, but I enjoyed just being out in the woods, being outside, opposed to being in a gym. So that's just me. So as I started looking at my diet, and I was thinking about
now, what made you look at your diet?
Yeah, because I was trying to maximize my performance.
Okay,
and
so
again,
you felt like you reached a peak at your performance with your...
Yeah, I think so. I think I was more like, what else can I do? You know, I don't, again, I was just a very amateur athlete. This isn't like professional ranks or anything. But this is an important part of this particular podcast, is that we're just wanting to share with you, can you reach your full potential? Anyone out there that's listening to this, I always tell people, reach your full potential. If I had the genetics or was gifted in a way that I could have taken my level of fitness to a level where I could compete in some professional way, I would have. But I wasn't that. But I knew I could do better, to answer your question.
So you went to the
So
diet.
I was looking at all these things. So I was looking at how I was training, right? Ride my bike 6 days a week, right? Go do intervals, do this, do this. So I was doing that, and I said, what about diet? So I was a typical raised on meat and potatoes. That's the way I was raised. In fact, my dad worked for a meat company, so we ate a lot of processed meat, actually, which we'll get into. But just in general, we were a meat and potatoes family, and I never knew any different. That's how I was raised. So I started looking into this idea of I started eliminating first. So what I started with is I started eliminating red meat. And part of that was for the fat. I wanted to eliminate some of the saturated fat that's in red meat. So I went to a lot of chicken and turkey type stuff.
Okay, leaner stuff.
Leaner. I wasn't really into fish. for a
Yeah,
variety
you never
of reasons.
have been, yeah.
Yeah, we'll maybe cover that another time. Probably because I didn't have a lot of fish was one of the reasons.
It's expensive.
My family just didn't. We weren't fish eaters, and
Right.
so when you're a kid, it's funny how much of your diet is shaped by your parents.
Well, and I think too, we'll talk about this another time too. My dad came from a lower middle class family.
Yes.
And I believe that fish even now, I mean, it's so expensive.
It's true.
So think about it. Your mom was probably cooking more. She wasn't making like steak every night, was she?
No.
You see, it's because it's expensive. So go back. Okay, so you
I
weren't
mean, we
too
had
much
hot dogs, bologna.
Right,
Does
cheap.
anybody out there know what bologna is? One day we'll talk about that.
So anyways,
So all, and we had
so
vegetables.
you did leaner stuff.
Yeah,
You
my
went-
I should point out, my grandma had a farm, which I spent a lot of time of as a kid, and so we had a lot of vegetables. So we always had vegetables. We always had fresh
Yeah.
vegetables and stuff like that. So as back to
But you leaned out your meat.
well, I was at this point in my life, I'm late 20s. I was like, man, I've eaten meat my whole life. I just wanted to try different stuff. So I never had a lot of. The other thing, I never went out to eat a lot as a kid. We never went out, so I didn't really know what. I was almost kind of like, wow, Mediterranean food. Wow, this stuff's pretty good. I never had this before.
Right.
So I'm getting into that kind of food. Which Mediterranean diet you hear now. There's a diet called Mediterranean diet.
Right.
I just like
Cuisine, yeah.
cuisine.
Yeah.
But there's actually a Mediterranean diet.
Okay.
There's books out there and so on. So I was just like, wow, this is some really good food. And then I got into more legumes, which I never really did a lot of those. And of course, salad. I was not a huge salad eater, but man, I find myself making these big salads. I'd even throw some rice in there. So I was still eating grains and stuff.
This is your late 20s?
Yeah, and this is, remember now, I'm eating primarily because I'm cycling a lot. I'm riding my
Competitive.
bike constantly, and I'm trying to increase my fitness. I'm trying to perform better. Never again at some elite level, but for me, from where I came from, being able to hardly ride 3 miles to now going out and riding, sometimes 100, 150 miles a week, and then competing on the weekends, that was a lot for me. I'd never done anything like that. And this reminds me how important it is to say this. I think oftentimes our goals, meaning your goals, you that are listening to this, that's the key. It has to be, when I was personal training, people would come in and typically, if I was talking to some women, they would say, well, I want to lose weight. And I said, okay, do you have, outside of that goal, are there any other goals? And what I was kind of looking for is them to say, yeah, I want to feel healthier. Well, what does that mean? Go for a long walk, ride my bike. I was looking for something else besides just losing weight. And if they couldn't give me that, I would encourage them to think about something like that. Like, set something within that goal of, hey, I want to lose weight, but also I'd like to be able to go out for a walk and walk 5 miles in X amount of time or something like that. So the reason that's important is that ties then this idea of being healthier, a lifestyle, into multiple things. Or, hey, I'd say, where do you want to be how do you want to feel when you're 65 or 70? And they'd look at me. I want to be active. Okay, I want to be, riding a bike or going for walks on the beach or whatever. Say, well, what's your current goal to get there? And usually they didn't know. So I said, well, building a lifestyle that, just like a smoker, if someone starts smoking today, it's not going to kill them. If they smoke for 30 years or 40, they're probably going to have some health issues.
Right.
Similarly with diet. If you are eating junky food today, it's not going to kill you today, but most likely, 30, 40 years worth, that it's going to happen. That's why heart disease is one of the top diseases in our society. So back to as I was thinking about eating different things, I didn't just wake up one day and make this decision. It was a process. And as I ate more vegetarian style of foods.
And the root of the process was what? Give it to simple.
Performance. Yeah,
Performance. So you wanted to perform
that
better.
was it.
And
But
what told you that you would perform better with this type of diet?
well, at that point, too, I was trying to even lose more weight. Even though I was losing weight, I got, I lost a lot of fat, of course, and I was still. Cyclists are generally pretty small people, or thin is probably a better word. But if you're a 175-pound cyclist, you're you're probably still on the big side, right?
Wow.
So I was, 230.
Wow.
So I was so, and why that's a big deal is when I'm going up the hills, the 160-pound guy has got a little easier than I do.
So my dad's height, what are you, 6'2"? And my dad has always been what would you say, huskier? That was the term you always used.
That was Mom's.
His mother.
My boys are husky.
Yeah. So my dad and I are, it's funny because my mother is that type of cyclist body type that
Yes.
you are, because she was also, when my dad got married to her, she got into cycling and she had that cyclist, lean muscle, very, very thin body type.
Yes.
Where my dad, what he's describing for those just listening, maybe not watching us on YouTube, subscribe. No, just kidding. But what my grandma would say is a huskier, taller guy. So anyways, all right. So the guys who were thinner than you were.
I moved towards the vegetarian diet. So salads, legumes. I like potatoes still, all kinds of vegetables. I was sticking with. I would still have some dairy, but no real milk of any type, no cream, nothing. So that's when I started using rice milk and
the co-op.
And remember too, this is a few decades ago. There wasn't really stores. Whole Foods wasn't around.
Mm-mm.
There was one store that was probably.
I remember it. What was the name of it?
It's called Good Foods.
Yes.
And it was they had organic, and this was the other thing, by the way, that came out of all this too, was the whole organic thing. And growing up partially or staying with my grandma on her farm for a while, I never realized, we'd have all these vegetable gardens and stuff, and we would use fertilizers and whatever. I didn't know any different. It's just a normal process. And then I started realizing that all these chemicals and pesticides and things that are used get into the ground. And where do plants get their nutrition? From the ground, from the soil. So, you can look all this stuff up. If you want it, you can go down the rabbit hole of reading tons of stuff. Nowadays, there's tons of, actually Netflix has some great programs that are out there about farming and pesticides and, like I said, depends what your interests are. But nonetheless, that also overlapped. This vegetarian idea was eating food that was organic and healthy for me. And what I found was it was very difficult to find the organic stuff. So I got involved with a food co-op, meaning a group of people who come together to place large orders with these various companies around the country, and they deliver it in bulk all at once. And we'd go to we have a location they would bring it to.
It was like the weekends,
yeah,
right?
It was all different times.
I remember early in the morning we would pull up.
We literally, when they would call us, we had to be there. It was kind of like this weird deal. But then I had to buy things in bulk. So now you couldn't get your vegetables and things that way. You still had to seek those out. So I did different things. I found some farmers, and you can usually find in your area nowadays. There's organic farmers. We have one right up the road from us. That's just awesome. And
we got to go there this weekend.
Yeah, tomorrow morning we should go.
Yeah.
So all this to be said is, so now I'm in this. I had slowly moved from the direction of eating the diet I was raised on to this vegetarian, organic, cleaner diet. And at the same time, and I felt great,
And what made you cut out your lean meats? Chicken, turkey?
I think it was I always tell people this. It wasn't like part of it was what I learned about meats at that given time.
You just cycled it out.
But it was,
that's kind of what I done with eggs before.
Well, I was like, man, I've been eating a certain way for 20 plus years. Why not try something different? Sometimes it's as simple as that. It doesn't have to be. That's why I think people fail at diets, because they are trying to go away from the foods they really like to these foods that aren't as good. Or, the
tasting.
Yeah, the diet franchise has this brand of foods, and they're horrible, right? So when you make these kinds of changes, you have family members and friends, because I was changing physically too, who are worried. What do you mean you don't eat meat? You're not getting enough protein. So I did a lot of research on that, and I would encourage anyone out there, because we're not doctors, to do the same. And so when I was lifting weights, a lot of the folks I was lifting weights were like, you need 2.2 grams of protein for your body weight, which is like 400 and some grams of protein, which
Ooh.
is, I mean, so that's why I'm eating chicken and I'm drinking all these shakes and doing all this stuff. But your body can only assimilate so much minerals, so much of, it's like,
I think that's why a lot of people turn to steroids.
Yeah. Well, and that's a whole discussion there.
Yeah.
But when you think about, like, you see people go and supplement and they start taking a bunch of supplements, but they don't really know what their body's absorbing because they're just taking tons of supplements.
Right.
And it's like, or they take a multivitamin. Well, how can a multivitamin, the same multivitamin, work for an 82-year-old woman and an 18-year-old man?
Right.
Something's going to waste. It's just the right. So we'll get into what you can do to really figure that part out. And again, there's plenty of podcasts out there that go way more deeper into this kind of stuff. That's not what we're trying to do.
We're just kind of give you the idea of like what worked for us. So
what's a standard that you could consider as you're thinking about your lifestyle?
Well, so with that being said, from where he left off, so that's kind of where I came into the picture. I was born and my mom was also really on board with this. And she would always take me to the food co-op. And I remember being a little girl and we would get our blue chips and we would get the rice milk and we would get the bulk foods. And then I was always fed eggs, avocados, really just healthy stuff as a kid. That's just how it was. And obviously there was our trips to McDonald's. Trust me, I had plenty of my Happy Meals and stuff like that.
You did?
I did. But I do remember, it's funny, a pivotal moment in my vegetarian life is I have this memory of trying rice milk. And I remember for a long time, it was one of the only milk alternatives, which is so interesting because nowadays you cannot go to a coffee shop. You can't go somewhere and get rice milk.
That's right.
It's so interesting. You'd think rice milk would still evolve and they would have made it, but you know what? They scratched it. You can still, I think, get it at some health food stores, but it's not a main source. So, and it's funny that it was literally probably, and I could be wrong, but one of the first alternative milks. And
let me just comment on that. There wasn't oat milk, almond milk. There might have been almond milk.
Really?
Yeah, almond
in the
milk.
90s?
Yeah, so almond milk was not as common, but I believe that was one of
I remember macadamia maybe.
No, it was, but it was definitely Rice Dream was the brand.
Rice Dream.
We even had their ice cream, which was actually pretty good.
It was good. But so I will say from there, so then as a kid, I only have so much memory and I only had so much choice as a kid that age, right? I was probably remembering I was like 2 to like 6. And I remember my brother came along 2 years later. So by the time I was 6, he was 4. That's when I really, my parents were still really into the heavy vegetables and just like cooking really good food. And by the way, neither of my parents, and just for those of you out there maybe feeling like, wow, this is so hard, I don't even know where to start. It's not like my parents were chefs or cooks, right? They just did what they could and assembled. It's all about assembling, right? Just assembling things. And we're putting vegetables together, maybe steaming some vegetables, and then adding some fruit, adding some other vegetables you didn't have to cook. And they made it work. And so as a kid, eating kind of plain, you don't really know anything else because all you've had is what your parents have given you. So to me, I didn't know I was, quote, missing out, right? So as I got to the ages of, let's say 8 to 10, my mom, I remember asking my little brother and I, we were at a party or something, and she was like, oh, do you want a hot dog? And I was like, oh no. That's when I officially felt like I made my own independent decision as a child, which is so interesting that I made that decision. Mm-hmm. But I was like, I don't need meat. I don't even know if it was a stuck up thing of me because I was like, I don't need meat. Because as a child, I almost thought it was cool that I was like the only one who didn't eat any meat. Maybe it was me being a little bit like, oh, I don't need this, but who knows?
Well,
I was sassy.
We had what were called not dogs.
Yes.
Which were hot dog they look like hot dogs, but they weren't.
They were Morningstar.
Well, now we had the bean burgers they were called, and they were nowadays you have several companies
Tons.
that have
There was only a few.
Beyond Meat is
Yep.
the big one now.
Yep.
In fact, I think they serve those. Like
I don't know if they have hot dogs though.
I don't know if they do,
Yeah.
but they serve those like at McDonald's or wherever.
I don't
even
or
know.
other fast food places. So I would just say as time went on, I stayed a vegetarian, and I really didn't introduce fish to my diet until I was really hanging around my Nana and Papa. And when my parents would take us over there and we were old enough, we got older, my Papa was a chef. He would make these incredible tuna salads and sandwiches and mix it with this coleslaw cream. He would do.
Or you probably use mayonnaise.
Well, it was mayonnaise, but then he'd use a coleslaw cream. So the coleslaw cream you can actually buy to mix with your broccoli slaw. He would just use that and mix it in with the tuna, do pickles, melt cheese, and he would make these tuna melts. And I remember they were so delicious. So from there, I then did introduce fish. Now, as a kid, my mom and dad didn't buy a lot of fish because my dad didn't eat it. And then when my parents split, my mom, there was like a budget going on because there was a lot of watching finances. And my mom wasn't buying a ton of fish. But she loved to cook like her dad. So there was a time where she was buying some salmon here and there. And I'd be like, oh, I would love some salmon. So I then, when I wanted to be experimental, I started to dabble into fish. And I liked it. I didn't mind it. But veggie sandwiches to me, still with sprouts and mustard and mayo and tomato and cheese, was still great. So that's kind of my story from when my dad, as a kid.
And I think as I made those decisions, and all of you are probably thinking about the diets you had living with your parents.
Yeah, and what they cooked.
And there's many traditional foods that come out of what your heritage is, your Polish, Italian, Irish, whatever. There's a lot of those traditional diets and foods that come from, and I think those have gotten lost over the years, but many of you out there are probably going, yeah, when I go over to Grandma's house, she makes this type of food, pastas and what have you.
Right.
And so that's cool too. And I think that brings up the idea of moderation. Sometimes we, again, going away from this idea of dieting versus blending foods into your current diet to be healthier. A lot of people, the real way to lose weight, if that's one of your goals, is
calorie deficit.
It is, and it's a half a pound a week is a reasonable way. If you really think about, it's like, I think it's 500 calories times 7 is 3,500. You'll lose a half a pound a week. So someone would say, well, half a pound, it's going to take me
if
forever.
you have 3,500 calories.
Less calories per week, you'll lose a half a pound.
Oh.
So if you're used to eating X, you'd have to do the math on this. You can Google this one. The point being is that if you were to say, if I lose a half a pound a week, that's 2 pounds a month, that's 24 pounds in a year. So I would think that if you took the time and lost the weight and
that's with no exercise?
That's just calories.
Yeah.
That's correct. Now, again, we're not saying you can eat cookies and just reduce it by 500 calories. What we're saying is this is why this topic, we could spend the next 20 episodes talking about this. So we're trying to just give you sort of on the borders of where you need to maybe be thinking if you haven't tried other things, and to share with what drove where we're at today. And I think that's important, but moderation in terms of whether if you're listening now and you go, well, I want to still eat meat. Well, that's great. I eat meat now. I do.
Yes.
Started eating it again. And so if you're going to do that, what we're just saying is, maybe you don't eat meat for every meal of the day. Maybe you don't eat it every day. Maybe it's every other day. Similarly, maybe you like ice cream. You don't eat ice cream every day. Maybe you save it for certain times.
Friday night.
If you like to drink, maybe you don't drink maybe you drink less. Maybe there's a lot of calories in that.
With that being said, you kind of have to listen to your body because it's so true. Everything in moderation. But sometimes, I'm going to be the hard person here. Sometimes there's no such thing as moderation for those things anymore. For me, just the other weekend, I hadn't drank in about 2 weeks. And you would say, wow, okay, you are totally okay to go out on a Saturday night and have a few drinks. Well, here I was. I had a few drinks, 2.5, 3 drinks maybe, over the course of a 7.5 hour period. And now, granted, it was liquor, right? You would say, oh, maybe you shouldn't do that after 2 weeks. But here I was just thinking I was going into it with moderation, as a normal person that lives in a big city would say, oh, yeah, it's probably not a big deal. I was so sick. And so now my moderation is now eliminating it, because at that point, maybe I can have 1 drink again a night down the line. But once I think I have 2 drinks, it's downhill for me. And people would be like, wow, that's kind of crazy. I can do 2 drinks, go drive 40 miles home. So I think,
so that's a form of moderation.
It is. But people would say that it's strict. They wouldn't even say that's moderation. Some people,
you may have a glass of wine
on a holiday.
At some point, you may have half a glass of wine, but
you're
not.
So for instance, my grandma's moderation for sugar was a tiny slice of strawberry rhubarb, maybe once a year. Yeah. I would say maybe once every 2 years.
Well, she just didn't like it. Yeah.
Well, but that was her moderation.
Sure.
She loved rhubarb pie. So just so you're listening, listen to your body and what it truly needs. If you're in a situation where you have gas, you're not losing weight, or you're not reaching your workout goals, or both, start just eliminating things slowly but surely. And then if you push yourself over the edge, maybe have too much fried food and you start to feel sick, okay, now this is where I really need to reel it back, either eliminate it or lightly do it. So I think with this whole vegetarian health diet, like I said, my 2 diets I've done my entire life is pescatarian and vegetarian. However, with pescatarian, I've never had chicken or turkey. No idea what it tastes like, and I don't plan on trying to. I think when it comes to then sugar, carbs, for me, I've had to really listen to my body and just know that if I want a certain body type and to perform and feel and look a certain way, those moderation tweaks I'm making are going to be almost no moderation. I've become so strict. And some people be like, well, don't be so hard on yourself, No, I'm going to be hard on myself because my goals mean so much to me. So remember, when you're writing down your goals and what you want to achieve with how you look, how you feel, how you're working out, how many miles you bike, how bad do you really want it? And then that's how far you will go with your moderation and your tweaking in your diet. So for me, I've been lenient. I've had fried food before. Now I can barely have fried food because 1, I know it makes me feel sicker than ever. And 2, I just know all the hard work of all the weeks I've put in making my body tight, stronger, faster, my skin clear. I know that's going to set me back even if I have a little bit of moderation. So I'm harder on myself. And some people will be like, well, do you want to die stressed out about your diet all the time? You make it a lifestyle and you understand that I am fulfilled with knowing that I'm giving up these things so I can have my goals that I want so bad. So it's how bad you want these things. How bad did you want to be good at riding bikes? Well, enough to give up meat, and you had it your whole life. You gave up meat and you really were strict with your diet. And not only that, then you had your kids follow it because that's how you were following it and you really believed it. It's what you really wanted. So with this, you have to remember, how bad do you want these things? Maybe after you listen to this podcast, or sometime you get time, if you're journaling, if you like do the whole thing in the meditation in the morning, write down your goals and then maybe think about how bad do you want these goals. So many people say, I want a hot body, I want abs. Well, how bad do you want it? And how much are you really willing to sacrifice to get it, or experiment with diets, health, and wellness to get there? I have gone so many years and spent so much money on experimenting with health, wellness, cold plunge, saunas, this diet, no fried food, add fried food, but then don't eat this, try alcohol, no alcohol. I'm still experimenting because I have to constantly, our bodies evolve too. So I think what's so important about this topic is there's no right way, but you can listen to your body and you'll know if you want something bad enough, you will do whatever it takes and sacrifice. Because to me, with my diet, I have sacrificed. to be where I am and to look how I am. And even though I have a gene where I'm a little bit leaner, I still work extremely hard to have the body that I have, and I know I'll have to. If I want tight, lean muscle and to be good at Pilates, ballet, and hiking and hike 4 miles like it's nothing, I have to work for it. And as much as there are days where it really sucks, I still do it. And so, it's how bad do you want to be? You want to be fit, and how bad do you want to, that's the thing here. So,
well, I think that, you said the word sacrifice a couple times, and it's human nature when you hear the word sacrifice, suffering, uncomfortable, all those things.
It is
start
though.
Going to, well, so here's
Sometimes.
it's a programming issue is what I would like to say. I think we don't need to sacrifice as much as for example, when I gave up eating hamburger, I love hamburgers. So I was like, man, it's probably of all the things that I was giving up, I love a big hamburger with all the fixings on it and just get after it, French fries and the whole thing. And I remember thinking to myself, man, but I started just moving away from it. And then, I found, of course, the veggie burgers and the different things that gave me a similar level of satisfaction. It wasn't the exact, but it was similar. So I didn't really feel like I was sacrificing. I felt like I was replacing. So
that's
oftentimes,
a good way to look at it.
Yeah. So I
but
think,
you're listening to your body, and that's.
Well, yes and no. It was again. So let me back up one more step. This goes back to your goals. You have to be thinking about what is. So most of us in life, we set goals with we leave high school, we go to college. Maybe we don't go to college, we go to trade school. We just get a job, we start working. These are all goals, right? Your whole life, your goals are set for you. I always talk to people about goals, and I'll say, if you think about it, going from kindergarten to a senior in high school, that's a yearly goal. Because you go from kindergarten to first grade to second grade, right? That's the goal, to get to the next grade. So you've lived your whole life, literally, as a little 5-year-old kid. And if you think about it, going from crawling to walking, those are all goals, right? All these things are goals. So why do we, when we become, quote, adults or what have you, we forget about goals? And so it's the same thing. You've already kind of been conditioned to have goals. So now it's a little different, though. Those goals were preset for you. Every year when I was raising you, hey, this year first grade, next year second grade, third, and so on. So, and along the way, if we had to make sure you were doing well to get to that next goal, we did, right? So what I tell people is I think we overwhelm ourselves and we overthink it because we hear so many things. We hear the term sacrifice. We hear all these things. So we overwhelm ourselves with these major decisions. And that's why, going back to the extreme dieting that people go through and fail at most of the time, is because they're sacrificing. They haven't, and one last thing, they haven't made the adjustment up here, right? They're trying to live a lifestyle that isn't what they really want. And so as a result, they have a greater chance to fail. Some of you might say, hey, I did a diet program and it worked great for me. Fantastic. That worked for you. Doesn't work for everybody. What we're talking about isn't going to work for everybody.
No.
And that's why I'm go back to this as we think about trying to leave some folks with ideas that they could use. We gave them sort of this story of what you and I went through. Now what I would suggest is this, and certainly add in here. So number one, what's the goal? I give you just a quick example. So after all this biking stuff we've talked about and bored you with, I've always tried to still maintain, like I did rollerblading for a while. So when I started rollerblading, I was like, I got to set a goal. Well, there happened to be a rollerblading competition in my area. So I said, okay, I looked it up. How long is it? It's 12 miles or whatever it was. So I got to get out and rollerblade. So that's what I did. A few years ago, I wanted to do what's called a 14er. That's where you climb a 14,000-foot peak to a 14,000-foot peak. So what did I do? I set that as a goal. I align my activity and my food along with what I would need to do that to make that achievable for me. So that's kind of what I mean when I say goal. If it's weight loss, the good news was, as I always set those goals, I ended up losing weight because I was doing an activity. So I found that was sort of the back way to get into my diet or weight, goal, was to pick an activity, and then that would actually help me get there. So something to think about. Set a goal. If you said, hey, I just want to wake up with more energy every day, that'd be a great goal. Maybe you don't need to be chowing down on 4 bags of chips at night before you go to bed. That'll help you wake up and feel more energetic, because when you'll be surprised. Little things like that. So set the goal. Number 2, then, when you set the goal, and I believe this, you have to write it down. And I'm going to tell you right now, most people who set goals don't write it down. And the reason they don't write it.
I don't always.
Yeah. And I would say that there's a certain amount of people that don't need to do that. They can hold themselves accountable. That's really what goal setting is. It's a method to hold yourself accountable. So if you're the type of person where you failed at goals, this time write it down. Write down what the end goal is on a piece of paper. And then start writing down every day what you need to do to reach that goal. Write it down, though. Make the commitment. Write it down. That is accountability. And that's the key in life.
Write it down and put it where? Does it matter?
Yeah, well, I prefer...
I like the fridge.
Yeah, you could keep a little journal. Most people, I know computers have all kinds of ways to keep notes.
Yeah, notes.
You could do that if you wanted. I don't know if that's as effective
Okay.
as writing stuff down.
Okay.
But oftentimes, I just encourage you to write it down. Keep it front and center.
All right.
Wake up every day. If you need to put a note on the fridge or your mirror that you get ready in and says,
It's good, though.
stay focused.
You can see it. Yep.
That's right. If you have a partner to do it with, that's always helpful. Accountability, that's another way. Not someone that's going to, rag on you about it. Like, hey, how come you're eating that again? But someone who's going to kind of take the journey with you. That always works. Mm-hmm. And whether it's your husband, wife, friend, whatever it is, doesn't matter. Just have someone that's, in the case of the 14er, I did it with my wife. And so she was down for it. She's like, yeah, let's do this. And so we were, going finding this. There's a park near us that has these big, long set of stairs. So we'd go out there and up and down these stairs for, like half hour, 45 minutes, because that's what basically when you're climbing up to these 40, it's all uphill. But with people, another podcast, coming downhill is just as hard, but that's another discussion. So we were doing it together. We were thinking about it. We were thinking about what we would need water-wise, what we could take for a snack while we're doing this thing. So it really, and it ended up being a lot of fun too, by the way. So set the goal, be accountable to the goal, write it down, all right, and then begin. Something that's very important, you're going to make mistakes. You're going to have a cheat day. Say if you've been really good and you're watching what you eat and so forth, and all of a sudden you go out with some friends and eat a whole large pizza.
I've been there. Well, not a whole large, but fries.
Whatever, or you eat ice cream, whatever your thing is.
Yeah.
Just get back on track the next day.
Yep.
That's why.
Realize that it may slightly set you off your goal a little bit.
Maybe not.
Or
build it in.
But what I realized is when I had my goal, wrote it down, started it.
Mm-hmm.
I started noticing when I did fall off on a Saturday, when I was in my early 20s, that was fine. It didn't affect me. I was right back at it. But as I got in my later 20s, I realized those setback days lasted a little longer than just that night of going home feeling gassy, bloated. It lasted a day and a half. So then I'm gassy and bloated for an extra day and a half after I did that. And I was like, oh man, well, I'll fight it off. So then I would do it again. So just feel your body out, right? So if you notice that you can't bounce back and you need to, or you can deal with a 2-day bloat, fine. Just know that that's what you're going to get. You're bloated, whatever, but get back on track. So that's what I wanted to just add.
Well, I think the important thing of what you said is that you begin to realize, and I failed to mention this, I felt so good by being eating clean, eating healthy, that when I cheated, I hated the way I felt.
That's where I'm at.
That's right.
Yeah.
That I didn't want, it wasn't worth it anymore.
Right.
That two slices of pizza really wasn't worth it anymore. As much as I know they were good at the time, but because you're feeling so much better and you're living so much healthier of a lifestyle and you have more energy and all these things, you're like, you know what? It's not even worth it.
And you just even proved one of my points wrong. I said earlier, it then becomes not a sacrifice.
That's right.
It becomes, as much as I would love this piece of pizza, maybe I'll have a bite, call it a day, and eat my salad. And it's not even that I sacrifice that piece of pizza anymore. It's I just know the gas and bloat I'll have for the day and a half after is like kind of just not worth it for me right now.
That's right.
But then when I do feel like I can deal with 2 days of bloating, I'll have the piece of pizza.
Maybe
I won't. Maybe I'll be so used to just
or maybe
feeling
there's
good.
a type of pizza out there. This is another thing. Like I mentioned, the hamburger
find
thing.
replacements.
You find replacements.
Yes,
So
I love that.
So this whole idea of, and why we're talking about this as a standard, if you will, is that standard is going to have to work for you. And what you want to think about is this something you can do for the rest of your life? Meaning with some adjustments. I'll use lifting weights. I told earlier how I lifted weights years and years ago. Now I continue to lift weights, but now it's just a means of maintaining some strength, maintaining posture, all these other things, more stretching now. So it's it's always evolving, right? As you age, you just mentioned your body's changing, right? When you're 20, I mean, I used to go out and pound, White Castle hamburgers at 2:00 in the morning and, eat them like they were going. If I did that today, I'd probably, I definitely would be on the floor for a while.
Yeah.
So you're thinking about the long range plan here.
Yeah.
Is am I building in my lifestyle,
Right.
this healthy or certainly the type of lifestyle that I can sustain and, evolve. Like I still ride bikes. I'm going to always do that until I physically can't. So are these things, and the reason I wasn't a runner is when I ran, it hurt. I didn't like the way it felt. So I cycle.
Right.
There's people who row. There's people who do other things. Whatever that is, just walking is great for you. If you can get out and walk.
30 minutes, guys, every day.
It's just a
game changer.
Yeah, and just get outside, the air and the whole thing. It's just, it's the and we didn't get into the mental side of all this.
Right, that's a whole nother.
Once you have this, and I believe, and when we were talking about doing these podcasts, the link between the spiritual and the physical, right, and the mental, all that works in harmony to get us a better standard in life, right? That's really what we're talking about. And so this is just one idea, that this progression towards being a vegetarian or a pescatarian or
keto diet
or a Mediterranean or whatever it is. But just understand, that's why the moderation thing was more about this idea that, I've evolved in my diet and I still will. I plan on evolving more and more, and I'm sure it will as a result of my age, my physical activity. By the way, I like to eat. I like food.
No, yeah, you do.
So
and do I.
Yeah, and we try different things. You come into town, hey, let's try this new thing I've been eating. Okay, that's really good, and vice versa. So, I mean, and I think the cool thing, there's so much good food out there.
And you're right. I have been looking for replacements. So coming into town, there was this puppy chow that is sweetened with date sugar. It's gluten-free, and it's a puppy chow that is done in the cleanest way you can do puppy chow, because I do, like you said, I love to eat. I love snacks. I love sweets. You're a big sweet tooth. I'm a huge sweet tooth. I definitely got it from you because my mom is a savory person.
Not at all.
Yeah. And my brother is a savory person. So I am definitely a sweet tooth. And so here I am, I pull up to his house and I've got these replacements, right? Or even I got my dad for Father's Day, a part of his weekend we're hanging out, is these gluten-free, paleo, dairy-free bagels, because
and they're okay.
I really like them.
Yeah.
Shout out Pagel. I love them. And you get
Bagel, if you're listening.
Yep. Sponsor me, not him.
Yes.
No, just kidding. But I look with cream cheese and all that. So we are constantly
And it's
looking.
a vegetarian cream cheese.
Yeah. So no, I got a real one.
Oh, that's a real one?
That's with probiotic. I know. Well, I do.
Uh-oh.
We do still eat dairy.
Yeah,
You're not a big dairy guy.
No, like I have a brother that drinks milk still, and I just haven't had milk.
No, that's rough.
And by the way, the egg thing you mentioned too, we're gonna bounce around here a little as we get ready to close this out.
Yeah.
I stopped eggs for a long time.
You did,
and
then I went 3 months without them.
Yeah, and I mean I went years without eating eggs.
Okay.
Then I would only eat egg whites, and then they say, well, the good part isn't. And that's the other thing. You know, the news will get, like, you'll see every 10 years or so they'll say coffee is horrible for you. It causes diseases or whatever. You know, I would say coffee would be one of the hardest things for me to give up, would be coffee. And, you know, I mean, I like tea once in a while, but coffee would be a difficult one.
So you've never sat and thought maybe I could go without it for a while?
I think I did stop drinking coffee. Your generation was exposed to coffee way sooner. When I was
right, because Starbucks was glorified.
Well, it was adult drink. I remember thinking that adults drink coffee. I don't drink. I don't think my first cup of coffee I was in my 20s, and it was horrible. It was gas station coffee.
My first cup of coffee, I was 21.
What? No,
yeah.
You were going to Starbucks when you were. Yeah, you were.
No, because in college I didn't really study. I didn't like to study. I wasn't a big school person, and a lot of people started coffee in college. A lot of people, I did do the Frappuccinos, but that has such a small amount. I mean, I guess I had a few Frappuccinos in high school,
I would
but
think so, yeah.
that doesn't like light you up the way a hot cup of coffee does. So I really didn't do my coffee stuff until junior year of college, where I was like, okay, I need to study a little bit. And then I did the Starbucks. I just did a drip coffee with a pump of vanilla splash of soy. So I was 20.
So back to some last takeaways. We mentioned the goals. As far as the quality of the food that you get, that's a big thing. If you notice now, you go even to your local grocery stores, they have organic lines of food, and we could have a podcast just on what does the term organic mean. There's unfortunately that term has been now abused, and just do a little research and you'll see what I mean in terms of what is considered organic or not. If you can find local, there's now, because of these trends, there's farmers markets, which are cool to go to. You find these little small farmers. In fact, there's one tomorrow, another one we could go to if we wanted, and you'd be shocked. You can really pick up some quality vegetables and fruits and so on, and meat, even through some of these places. They're just these small, really boutique farmers, and the prices are more reasonable. So, you know, look at the quality of the food you're eating. You know, don't kid yourself. When you're going to a fast food restaurant, and in many instances, any restaurants, it's not of the quality that you could get by going out and buying your food. I like going to a restaurant like anyone else, but oftentimes the quality of food there is not up to. So these are just some kind of tips and tricks sort of to go away with.
And just ideas from us, right?
Yes.
Because I would say out of a lot of people that we know, we're more advanced when it comes to just our experience in experimenting, right? Wouldn't you say? Like, I think we've experimented more with food than your brother has, than my brothers have. You know, I've experimented way more than my brothers have. So I would say, I hope you guys take this and you just note to yourself, maybe it gives you a little push just to kind of look in the mirror and really get a little bit more serious if you haven't gotten serious enough. Or if you're like, this lingering thought of, I do want to change the way my performance is in the gym, or if I go on a walk, I haven't gone on a walk and my mental health is kind of garbage right now, or what I'm eating does make me gassy and bloated. Just, I hope this kind of gives you a push to maybe make a few small tweaks. You don't have to get super intense. And as you get more passionate about it, hopefully you do, in health and just feeling your best and just having a quality life. It's not about living as long as you can, which we all want, but having the best quality up until your last breath. And I think if you get passionate enough about that, that's where my kind of motivation comes, and everyone's motivation will be different. But that just pushes me further to try new fun things and then shift it around. So I hope this just, you can take the few tips that my dad said and how he kind of is. He's, like I said, very logical, has his his 1, 2, 3 step. For me, it's passion. And I just hope whether you're more on that logical side, more on that emotional side of me and passion, whatever, you get motivated just to be a better, even if it's a 1% better version of yourself, your body, your health, your wellness, and your mental. That's kind of what the root of all these podcasts are going to be. So I'm so happy that I kind of got to share this very small piece.
Yeah, and it's important to mention, it's always good to see your doctor for these types of things
100%.
as well. I would say most recently, as we close out here, having your a blood panel done where you really see where your deficiencies are.
Stool is cool.
Yes.
We've done stool.
Did you just say stool? Oof.
Well, I'm not going to say the P word.
You poo-poo. But there's so many, you'll hear about gut health. Often leaky gut now is a big one you'll hear.
Gastritis.
So we've just recently gone down the path of the leaky gut stuff. My wife is a big, there's, her opinion is a lot of health problems come from that. And we're going to have her on here at some point because she's really passionate about this kind of stuff. Because leaky gut
is actually, if anyone here doesn't know, I'm going to give a very ABC version. It's literally when the lining of your gut is open and the food that you're digesting goes right into your bloodstream because you have openings in your gut lining. So that's leaky gut. And they do say listen to your gut. It is your second brain. So it can cause it.
Yeah, and I think, again, there's a lot here that we've covered. And again, Google's your friend.
Google's your friend. Talk to your doctor, nutrition friends.
Get a blood, I recently had, a complete blood panel done where I wanted to know where I was from a nutrient, what I was absorbing, what I wasn't.
Right.
And I think, again, rather than just throw a bunch of vitamins down,
right,
I wanted to make sure that I was, it was worth the process of getting this panel done to see what I should be taking. So these are all just some little tips and tricks. And if you're just sitting out there and you're going, hey, I feel great with what I'm doing now, great. Keep it going or adjust as you needed.
Yeah.
If you're just looking to try something different, try it. And always being, I think that's of a mindset that trying different things. If you're sick and tired of being sick and tired, then maybe really take this thing and really throw it up in the air and try something new.
Do you have any books?
There's tons of books, and I would be
2 to recommend.
Well, Nutritional Healing was the one that really got me started, and it's in its whatever edition it is now. I think it's Bach and Bach is the doctors that wrote it. And what's cool about it is if you're looking up a specific problem you're having, you can go in there and read about it. It tells you what supplements you should take, vitamins, minerals, and all that.
So cool.
What kind of organic, stuff you could take, what kind of naturopathic type of stuff you could use. Yep. So I've always used that just as a means of just educating myself on, a specific problem that I'm having.
Right.
So it starts there. Whether you follow their example of what you should take is up to you. But at least you have, I think that, again, I've said this now, educate yourself.
Yes.
Be proactive with your health is one of the most important things in your life.
Without it, you have nothing.
That's right. We're going to have a podcast on money and all kinds of other fun stuff.
Right.
But if you don't have your health, you've got nothing. So
you
take the time.
You can't enjoy anything without your health. On Sunday, when I was hungover and so sick, my stomach's growling. When I was hungover and so sick, I couldn't even open my eyes. So we'll conclude this episode. I hope you guys, this is what we're doing with these first few episodes, is just kind of giving you an intro to us as people too.
Yes.
So this kind of gets you to know us, so then we can get to know you in the comments as you guys throw out your ideas and what you thought about the episode. We'd love to just hear the criticism, good, bad, ugly, like my dad said in the last episode. And this is for you to get to know us as people and how we're not perfect either. We still have our moments like I have. Or my dad just had some ice cream, felt sick afterwards the other day. I drank some alcohol when I, maybe shouldn't have overdid it. So we're here to be your friend, get to know you, you get to know us, and then also maybe you can learn or get motivated from our learnings and our topics. So thank you guys so much for listening.
Peace out. Have a great day. Set some goals.
Write them down. We'll see you guys.
See ya.